Oh, very cool.
Yep, at FIU.
Oh, yeah, he's at FIU now. I haven't been there yet, but obviously a big school.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then the segment was just going to be like, I was going to do like a GOAT segment, like rapid fire. Like I asked you like who you think the greatest at each position is or something.
Okay.
Something cool, short, whatever.
Okay. I'm a pro, baby. I'm ready for whatever.
Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready to rock and roll. You ready?
All right. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this.
What's up, guys? Mystic Zach here with NFL star receiver Nate Burleson. You might know him now from NFL Network. You see him every Sunday morning. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Last night, we had a big game. Two of the AFC juggernauts, Buffalo Bills, Pittsburgh Steelers. This was a game, man. Pittsburgh a few weeks ago undefeated. Now they lost 2 in a row. But early on, we saw a very talented wide receiver in Deontay Johnson. He had a couple of drops, and he now leads the league in drops. Have you ever had a case of the drops, and how mental is it compared to physical?
Man, it's 100% mental. It isn't physical at this point. If you made it to the NFL, you know how to catch the ball. So when a guy goes through the yips, as we call them, it's more you being inside your own head. I remember playing in Detroit for the Detroit Lions, and I believe we had Atlanta at home. And final moments of the game, 2-minute drill, we just needed a touchdown. And I'm running this comeback route. And when I ran this comeback route, I was running away from where the big glass window is in the stadium. And once I came out of it, now I'm facing it. So as soon as I came out my break, it's one of those routes where you're blind and then you turn around, you have to locate quarterback and ball. And when I came around, all I saw was just this bright light. And it was in the winter, so it was snow outside plus the sun, and it just hit me. And the ball snuck up on me so fast that at the very last minute, I shot my hands up almost to defend myself, and it looked bad. Like, people in the stands was kind of like, what the hell is going on? And you can hear, like, my other teammates like, bro, what was that? Now, a few people that realize what football is and understand the moment, they're like, you couldn't see it, huh? Even the reporter after the game, he was like, I know you couldn't see the ball. Just say you couldn't see it, and everybody will forgive you. I'm like, nah, that's not me. It's not my personality. I should have known. I should have came out that break. I should have squinted my eyes, put my hands up. I should have did something. I don't care if I had to wear a visor in the fourth quarter. That was my fault. I was always taught if it touches my hands, then I should have caught the ball. Now, I bring all that up is because I was in my own head. After that game, I felt like it was my fault. We lost. And then all week at practice, I think about Monday, a couple of balls right off my hands. Tuesday, a couple of balls right off. Then Wednesday, I was like, all right, I got to get out my feelings, get out of my mind, and play some real deal football. And from there, I had a little bit of a rewiring. And that next week, I didn't have the yips. Now, I've had times in my younger career where those practices will build up, and then they get to the game, and then from there, it's just like a cycle. And you're in this like wicked cycle of dropping the ball. So yeah, it's tough, man, because it's just like a batter that's been used to hitting and he's striking out all the time, or one of the best shooters in the NBA just starts bricking. It happens in sports. It's just that with wide receivers, that's our only job. It's like you only had one job, is to catch it. And for Deontay Johnson, it was a rough going last night.
So after that, he gets benched. What does that do to your confidence?
It's not. It doesn't do as much damage as dropping the ball. Like, we've all been benched before. Having somebody come over and be like, hey, come here, man. It's just like calling a pitcher out, like, get off the mound. We're putting somebody else in. But when you're sitting on the sideline, it isn't your coach yelling at you. It isn't you being benched. It isn't seeing the guy who's your backup on the field. It's none of that. It's the fact that now you're in solitude. Crowd's going crazy. The game's still going. You hear cleats and whistles and clacking of pads. But to that receiver that's sitting on the sideline with his hands on his face, it's just him. It's almost like that dream that people say is your worst nightmare. Like you stand up in front of the classroom and you realize you're naked. Like it's like that type of feeling times a million. So when he was sitting there and his hands were on his head and people kept tapping him and saying like, "Are you good, man? You gonna be all right? We're gonna go back to you." The reason he wasn't moving is because in that moment it was just Deontay Johnson and his own thoughts, and that's the worst place to be in, because when you're in your own thoughts, that's when we're our worst critics.
think you're exactly right. I think that was I think it's an expert analysis that you're not going to get in a lot of places. But speaking of talented receivers, something sticks out when I look at your resume. You play with maybe the two most talented receivers in NFL history, Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson. You know the two guys I was going to name. What was it like playing with those guys, and how special really were they? And could you tell at first sight?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember coming to practice and seeing Randy Moss, and it was like seeing a rock star. This was when Randy Moss was like, he was the big stuff on campus, man. Like, he was the fastest receiver. He had these soft hands that could catch anything. And he pumped fear in every DB. And he would do things in the games that will wow the masses, but he would do stuff in practice that will wow us every day. And he could run like a gazelle. And he didn't put a lot of effort into it. And not that he didn't work hard. I don't want you to get that misconstrued. What I'm saying is, like, when he ran, it looked effortless. Like he was just blessed with pure speed, like a gazelle or a cheetah. And I saw that every single day at practice for 3 straight years or whatever it was when I played with him. And I think the best memory that I've had of Randy is one, him dropping gems on me whenever we spent time together. Him having that big brother moment where he kind of just saw me grow into this young man. He's like, hey, yo, okay, now you have arrived. It's almost like he was Morpheus. He was like, now you're the one. And I remember that moment because it was in the middle of my 1,000-yard season where he realized, like, all right, this young dude got something. And he kind of like took me under his wing. He was like, not only do you got something on the field, but I know you're passionate about the game. And that was a big thing for Randy. Like, he didn't like dudes that didn't care about the game. And he would almost distance himself from those guys. People who loved the game, put the work in, he would show a lot of love too. But I do remember in the games, like, I'd be in the slot, Randy be on the outside, the ball be inside here, and I'm looking at Dante Culpepper here on the count, down, set, and I'll look at my guy, see where he's at, check out his body language, see if he's leaning back, leaning forward, whatever it was, and then I would look outside at Randy, and I would see the DB, and I would look down at the DB's feet, and his toes would be slightly off the ground, and because he was panicking, he wanted to already get into his back pedal. The play hasn't even started yet. Randy would stand tall, like erect, straight up, because he was that fast. He can run from that position. Most receivers have to get low. It's like they're shot out of a cannon. And Randy would sit there standing straight up, and the DB, whites of his eyes, hands nervous, feet off the ground or toes off the ground so he could hurry up and get to that back pedal. And at that point, he had already won. Randy had already run, and he hasn't even ran the route. It's kind of like when Mike Tyson would get in the ring, and you would see them do that face-off, and Mike is just staring the dude down. And that guy would be looking at Mike, but then he break eye contact for a quick second. And even if you listen to Mike Tyson now, he's like, as soon as that guy broke eye contact, I knew. I knew that I won the fight because, like, I was staring into his soul, and he couldn't handle that. How's he going to handle my punches? Same thing with Randy Moss versus corners. And when it came to Calvin, I just remember the first day of practice seeing this massive 6'5", 240 beast that can jump a 44-inch vertical, run a 4.3, and he worked his ass off. And I just thought, man, this dude is legit. And I remember it was my first week there at practice after I came from Seattle and signed that deal there. And I remember the reporter coming up saying, hey, the Detroit Lions, we've had a long history of wide receivers that didn't quite work out. Charles Rogers was one of them. Rest in peace. He recently passed over the last couple of years. And Roy Williams, and I think they had like Mike Williams, and they had a few guys that just didn't pan out. And they were like, so do you think, after seeing Calvin, do you think he's going to be legit? He's a franchise guy. I'm like, are y'all watching the same dude I just saw at practice this week? I just got here and I know he's great. What are y'all hesitant for? And they were like, oh, Nate, well, I mean, we've been burned before. I said, nah, this dude's different. I said, in a matter of no time, he'll be the best receiver in the NFL. And they're like, whoa, really? And I was like, I guarantee it. I was like, I played with Randy. I know what greatness looks like. And because Randy, I think at this time, I'd have still been in the league, people thought I was taking a shot at Randy. But really, it was just me saying, nah, this dude's next up. And sure enough, a couple of years later, he broke Jerry Rice's single-season record. But yeah, he was blessed. God gave him everything: size, speed, the ability to jump, and humility. He worked every day like he was trying to make the team.
Did his retirement shock you?
Yeah, it shocked me, but it wasn't surprising and shocked because I'm a fan. So it's like I don't want it to stop abruptly. What I'm watching and enjoying, it's like watching a great movie and them just cutting it off. You're like, wait, we haven't even got to the climax yet. But surprising, nah, because I knew how beat up his body was, and I knew if there wasn't a bigger goal, then he wasn't going to continue to sacrifice his well-being, physically and mentally. Now, if he is playing for the Patriots that had a shot at a Super Bowl every year, now it's a different type of sacrifice. You may take a couple of more bumps and bruises, maybe a sprained ligament, for a Super Bowl ring. But when you're in Detroit, it's bleak, not just in the city, but the football field. And I think that was a conscious decision he made. He was like, all right, so what am I doing it for? If I've already proved that I could play at this level, if I'm not chasing the dollar sign, then what am I still doing it for? And I think that was a big factor that, we really weren't in contention to win any Super Bowls anytime soon.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a move that at the time he was so good. I mean, arguably still the league's best receiver. We've seen Megatron, Moss, so many different people, obviously one of the best to ever do it. We talked a little bit about cornerbacks earlier. Who was your toughest cornerback matchup in the NFL?
Champ Bailey was he was phenomenal. He's tall, long arms. He could run like the wind. And he was like a wide receiver once the ball was in the air. Charles Woodson, I would describe him the exact same way. And he could play safety, linebacker. You could put him on the line of scrimmage. He could come off the edge as a DN. And, of course, play cornerback. And you can put him back there at return. And he also was a ball hawk. Ball's in the air. It's like fighting another wideout for the ball. Most DBs, even if they're in good position, we like to joke and say they got hands like feet. So I'm going to get to this ball first because I know how to catch. It's what I do for a living. But when you're playing against Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson, it's like balls in the air, oh, snaps. There's two receivers fighting for the rock, which is just a ridiculous, mindset to have when you're out there trying to beat them. So those two guys were just phenomenal. I'd say two underrated guys, Antoine Winfield and Marcus Trufant were two underrated guys that I faced all the time.
Antoine Winfield's son now in the NFL. Does that make you feel old when you see him?
It makes me feel old when I see a guy like Tom Brady playing with him. And I'm like, okay, so Tom Brady was in the AFC East playing against Antoine when Antoine was playing for the Buffalo Bills. And now Tom is on the same team with his son. I'm like, damn, it makes me feel old, but it also makes me respect the hell out of Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think it's just hilarious when you see, juniors. We got Asante Samuel Jr. coming up soon. And Speaking of cornerbacks that fight for the ball, one guy that I think should be getting more attention for Defensive Player of the Year, Xavien Howard. He's at interceptions 5 straight games, got 8 picks on the year. What do you think of his ball skills? And do you think he's come from the same mold as Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson?
Yeah, he has a unique ability to high point the ball like a wide receiver does, which is something that a lot of DBs just don't have. And when you look at him compared to last year's Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore, you might even say that he's doing more than what Stephon did. I mean, of course, we know that he's leading the league in interceptions, but it's also the fact that he's almost shut down certain sides of the field. There's times where he'll go through a game and quarterbacks aren't testing him. I mean, that's like, premier number 1 shutdown corner type stuff. So he should get recognition. On top of that, the Miami Dolphins are relevant. It's not like he's doing this on a team that's garbage and he's making all of these plays in garbage time. Nah, he's making these plays and the plays have impacted the season.
Yeah, that's exactly why I think he should be recognized more as well. I think he should be getting some more buzz for Defensive Player of the Year, things like that. Do you think the signing of Byron Jones helped him a lot in being able to get more targets toward him? Obviously, Byron's known as a lockdown corner. That was a big free agency signing they had.
Yeah, I've always thought that having firepower, it will benefit. There's a misconception that, when you bring in another guy, it's going to take away from what I do. And it's not going to allow me to really show my skill. No, it doesn't matter if it's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, cornerbacks. The only position that doesn't need another one on the field is the quarterback position. But everybody else, I would welcome it. Every single team I was on. It got to the point where these young guys who were wide receivers that were literally there to take my position because they were drafted, they were younger and they were cheaper, they were confused. I had one wide receiver, Ryan Broyles, kind of come up to me in so many words, like, I don't get it. Like, I feel like sometimes you might be leading me down the wrong path. I'm like, why? He's like, I don't understand why you'd be helping me. Like, you said it yourself, Nate, I'm in position. I'm like, yeah, but like, if you do good and I know I'm still good and you're on the field, they have to make a decision. They have to pick their poison. If I step on the field and it's Randy Moss, or it's Calvin Johnson, and it's Nate Burleson, and it's Ryan Broyles, and it's a host of wide receivers and tight ends and running backs, that defense can't focus on me. I want them to put their weakest guy on me. I want them to give me their third D because I'm going to cook him all day, game long. But then on top of that, like, if I also give you the tools that you need, everything that you need to take my position, and you don't, you know how confident I am? I'm like, damn, I'm 30 and I'm still fighting off these young dudes who I literally gave every single gem and tool that I have. Like that's the ultimate confidence booster. You're not only passing it forward and doing something good to the game because you're giving it back to the youngsters, but you're also proving to yourself year in and year out that you still can fend off the young dogs or the young pups.
Recently, you've seen a rise in teams kind of realizing that the best way to build a defense is through the secondary. We saw the Dolphins, man, they signed Byron Jones, they signed Xavien Howard, they drafted a corner in the first round. This kind of originated, to me, with Bill Belichick. He's always valued secondary. Do you think that's the right move to value secondary over everything, especially on defense?
Yeah, I believe that valuing the secondary and then also having a host of running backs, those are two keys to being very successful. Not by surprise, Bill Belichick, he values both. I just look at the run that they've been on over the last decades. They've always had a great secondary, or at least guys that fit well in the system. They don't have to be individually great players, but collectively they were great. And then their running back groups. I mean, they always had a strong rotation of dudes. We're talking 5, 6 guys. And one week is one guy, another week is another. But that's a recipe for success for teams that can draft that way and put their teams together that way. So
your take is the more running backs with fresh legs, the better.
Oh, of course, 100%. I mean, listen, unless you got Derrick Henry, it's going to be hard for you to just have one workhorse that can do it all by himself. I mean, we see like Dalvin Cook, he's great. Josh Jacobs is good. Was it James Robinson down in Jacksonville? I mean, there's certain guys that they can do it. They can carry the load. But when you have a running back group by committee like San Francisco, like Seattle, that just helps out the offense because not only does it help the running backs from not being banged up, it's difficult to stop. So if there's a host of running backs, now you don't have that tendency. When Derrick Henry comes in, you know what's happening. But that's what makes Derrick Henry great, is because even though everybody in the whole stadium knows Derrick's getting the ball, he still can rush for 200 yards on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So with that being said, would you still be open, if you're the GM of a team, of course, to giving a guy like Derrick Henry a huge contract?
Yeah, I'm all about paying dudes. I feel like the NBA. Certain guys might get a big deal that you don't think they deserve, but you do it because they're in position and they earned it. Whether it makes sense or not. And I mean that figuratively and literally. The argument is, okay, look at Derrick Henry. He's the best running back in football, and he will lead the league in rushing, so he's worth every dollar. But then on the same take, I could say, well, but look at Christian McCaffrey. I mean, look at Saquon, who was next up to get paid. Look at Ezekiel Elliott, who got a big deal. It's like, okay, I get it. There's a yin and a yang to every decision you make when it comes to paying players. I say pay them all. And that's because I'm part of the fraternity. I'm part of this brotherhood. I want to see all of these guys that have put in work their entire lives, made it to the league, and had, whether it's a great season, a great few games, or whether they just hit the market at the perfect time. If they're up for getting paid, they need to get paid. Not one, because I feel like they deserve it, but two, the team has to pay somebody. Like, that's what people don't understand. Like, with the cap and how much these teams are making, they can't pocket all this money. So if they have to pay somebody, then it's a sliding scale. All right, how much money do I have? And who are the guys that are in my needs category that deserve this lump sum of money? And that's how you pay guys.
I agree with you 100%. And you see certain teams like the Colts who are salary cap masters. They've got it down. They're signing guys that they've built up. And I mean, they're not names that people know, the common fan, but they're getting pretty big contracts, and they can do that because they have so much cap space flexibility because of the way they built their team. I think that's super important, especially nowadays, if you're going to be an NFL GM. What advice would you give to a young player coming into the NFL soon or working their way up there?
One, just put your head down and keep working. You're going to have disappointments. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have things that will be looked at as setbacks. They're all just minor setbacks to a major comeback. So put your head down and keep working. Two, take a note out of Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and the Michael Jordan's Last Dance. Be addicted to the game. Be infatuated with the game. Like fall in love with the game every single day. Like re-fall in love with it every day. The monotony of the game will set in. You will get bored. You will get tired. You will become complacent. That's just the way life is. That's a human thing. That isn't a football thing. That's not a sports thing. That's who we are by human nature. So you have to literally resist that every day. You got to wake up and tell yourself, oh, I got to wake up a little bit earlier and work a little bit harder. The times where I was the most unstoppable were the times where I knew I worked harder than everybody else. I remember one particular year in college, I was a junior and I worked out with the team. Then I would make sure my diet was right. And then I would go do a second training. Not even like, I'm not talking about 30 minutes. I would go do a full training session with a personal trainer. That was every day over the summer. By the time the season started, when I lined up and I looked at that corner in front of me, there was this confidence that I had. It's almost like I took a spiritual steroid, because like I would look at this dude and I knew he didn't work as hard as me. There's times that I would say it to him. I'm like, look, I'm gonna run this route and I know you're not gonna stop me because I worked harder than you. I know you didn't. This guy thought I was crazy. What? Man, you over here talking, whatever, we'll lock you down. All right. You look up 4 quarters later, I got 12 catches for $1.75. Like that's how you gotta be. It's just like if you study for a test, we've all been there and you know you study. And then you see that test, you pick it up, you're like, I'm about to kill this. Oh, this is easy. Hey, boom, 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 boom. That type of confidence, you can have that in real life. You can have that in sports, but you got to be so focused, and it's hard. It is hard. It is the most exhausting thing in the world is to be great. So that's my advice to whoever it is that's coming up. And it's not just sports; it's anything, any craft in life. I don't care if you want to be a teacher, a politician, a rapper, an actor, or if you want to do fantasy, you want to do broadcasting, you want to do picks, it doesn't matter. If you wake up and you are infatuated with the game, and you teach yourself to re-fall in love with it, so you're always in that honeymoon phase, chasing your craft will reward you. Doors will start to open that you didn't even think will open up. And then when you get the money, save more than you spend. I'm not saying you can't stunt, but save more than you spend. Like everything is always going to be there. The women, the parties, the jewelry, the cars, that's going to be here 10 years from now. But if you start stacking up 10 years from now, you really get the stunt on.
It's so funny because I've interviewed a lot of boxers and they kind of say a similar thing, right? Like the hardest, whenever they work super hard before a fight, like the hardest they ever worked before a fight, they say that's when they had the least nerves. Yep. They already put the work in and they knew they were outworking the opponent, so there's nothing to worry about. Last but not least, I want to do a GOAT segment. Okay. So quick, rapid fire. I'm going to say a position and you tell me who you think the GOAT is.
Okay.
Wait, hold on.
Are we talking in the game? Or are we talking like past GOATs? What are we talking?
Every era, it's a free-for-all.
Okay, free-for-all. All right.
So, I mean, it can be, you can say Otto Graham or you can say Tom Brady.
Okay. All right, bet.
All right. Quarterback.
It's Tom Brady.
Running back.
Barry Sanders.
Wide receiver.
Jerry Rice.
Tight end.
Tony Gonzalez.
Defensive end.
Defensive. I'm gonna say a guy that wasn't necessarily defensive end, but he was just so good. I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll say Lawrence Taylor.
Defensive tackle.
Bruce Smith.
Middle linebacker.
I once again say Lawrence Taylor. Yeah.
Cornerback.
Charles Woodson.
Safety.
Ed Reed.
There you go.
That was good, man.
Thank you.
Of course, man.
I think that came out really well.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me know if you when you package it up and put a link, I'll tweet it out and all that.
All right, awesome.
All right, man. Take care. All right. You got my number now.
Right.
Keep it. All right, man.
You're there, Fred?